Right, so today the topic of conversation for Focus Episode 2 is a discussion of, or my experiences of higher education, the whole process of enrolling in education, higher education even, and my experience of actually being there at university. The reason for putting up this video is I've not actually ever seen anyone give a true first-hand account of their thoughts and experiences with university, enrolling and attending after they've actually been to university. There are a lot of freshers and newcomers to uni who put up their thoughts and experiences and a sort of what to expect. But none of them really give you a true perspective of what it's like to have been there, to have gone through all of it, and to have not sailed the smoothest seas when it happened. So first of all, it all starts at secondary school or high school before even joining university. There's the whole UCAS application and points system, which is a bit of a joke at best. So the UCAS application system it's a bit not streamlined from my experience. Who's at the door? The UCAS application system is not very streamlined, and there's no real support for students when they apply, in the sense that there's somewhere you can go to, especially online, to actually talk you through all of the application steps. From my memory, it was very much having to rely on a teacher or someone from the teaching body to relay information to you, and everything was very much paperwork, pen and paper, having to do it manually, and waiting days, sometimes weeks, between doing one part of an application and actually receiving a response. So that's first experience of anything university related. It's a slow start at best. For those not familiar with UCAS, it stands for University and College Admission System, I believe. Not a very good system. Naturally, your own experience may vary from mine. I admittedly didn't give it 100%, but that's because I didn't quite know what to expect. I had a bit of a bumpy ride. Some of it I created for myself, but it is what it is. So my decision to go to university wasn't so much a decision of my own, although I did always kind of want to go to university, purely predicated on the knowledge of higher learning or higher education, that you get to learn something that you don't get to interact with at school level. So I come from a lineup of 4 or 5 or so generations of university graduates in my family, so it was very much expected for me and both my siblings to go to university. It wasn't ever really a question. Even the notion of deciding to do anything else, or the decision to do it otherwise at all, was completely shunned. I've had some difficult conversations with parents in the past, especially as a teenager, and just even mentioning not going to university was a big no-no, so to speak. And naturally, with it coming from a family of doctors, GPs, dentists, accountants and engineers who have all been to university and very successful. Everyone just expects everyone else, as in me, my siblings, etc., to go to university and have the same success without really offering the option of a decision or choice. So as I said, I had a bit of a bumpy start or bumpy ride into university. Again, because of the UCAS system. So with the UCAS application, basically once you've chosen a course to apply for, you sign or agree to a list of requirements in order for you to get in, and then you write a letter to say why you want to get onto this course. Then along with this letter, the teacher or counsellor or whoever it is that's dealing with your application, they will submit your predicted results along with it, and everything is based on you attaining those predicted results to get your UCAS points to the minimum required to get in for that particular course. And in my case, the predicted results was lower than the requirements, which is a bit of a problem initially. However, I took it upon myself to actually get in contact with the admissions department at the university, and I basically asked them to lower the requirements for me to get in on the course I wanted to do, and surprisingly they agreed. The only proviso with it was that I complete a foundation degree first. So foundation degree or foundation year is just 1 year where you do a little of everything that's even vaguely relevant to the course that you want to study, which also, and they didn't tell me this at the beginning, which also opens the possibility for you to get onto other courses. So little did I know I would have had the choice to change after a year, but they didn't tell me beforehand, so I was not prepared when it came to that decision. So I made my application, didn't quite meet the requirements on my predicted results, wrote another letter asking for them to lower the requirements. It was agreed. Perfect. I had basically blagged my way into university, and at that point I thought, brilliant, now I'll now I'll be on the path to becoming an embedded software engineer. That's what I wanted to be. I had applied to study computer systems engineering, which is quite heavily programming oriented. Lo and behold, a year or so later, when the final lot of exam results came out, I had attained all of the UCAS points I required. I can't remember the exact amount. In fact, I had 20 more points than my new lower requirement, so I was happy I was in, and theoretically my spot at university should have been guaranteed. So I wait a few days after results to finally receive my acceptance letter from university, and eventually it comes through the post, and it's basically just got a great big denied stamp on there. So I was not accepted for whatever reason, even though in the letter it stated the lower requirement and the conversation I'd had with them to lower my requirements to get in. Naturally, I was confused at this stage because I'd attained all of the UCAS points I said I would, and they all added up to at least what was required of me. And by the time I actually got round to making a call to the university to ask what had happened, they just said, well, according to UCAS, I've only got however many points, and the number of points that they mentioned pertained only to one single exam. So not all of my points had been sent through. And by that point, I'd lost my spot at university as well. The only other option for me was to apply through clearing, although at this stage I didn't even know that. As far as they were concerned, the university, they were adamant that I was not going to get into any of the courses at all because I didn't have enough, didn't have good enough exam results. So I then contacted UCAS to see what had happened, and they admitted that there was a fault on their part, and they didn't submit all of my points through the system. They just completely cocked up. Once I received an email from them explaining what had happened, I forwarded that to the university admissions department. I then contacted them again, asked them to let me back onto my course, and they said all spots are filled. I'll have to apply through clearing. So yeah, I applied through clearing. Couldn't get a space on the computer systems engineering course I wanted to do. And the closest relevant course I could find was electronics and communications engineering. So yeah, that's that. So I applied, and within 12 hours I got a response to say I was in. So yeah, got my spot at uni. The only other option I was given was to take a gap year, for which I had no plans. I never really thought that to be an option, so I wasn't prepared to take that or do that at all. In hindsight, I should have definitely done that. A gap year would have been one of the better options to take. It's a bit senseless just sticking it out in education from primary to secondary school and then straight into university without seeing any other options. A gap year would have opened up my eyes a bit more. But all in all, support from UCAS is zero, zilch. They are useless in my eyes. I probably would have done better just applying directly to the university and manually handing them my exam results. So yeah, UCAS pointless in that on this occasion. So after I got into uni, after applying through clearing and being reaccepted, that gave me a couple of months to think about actually where I'm going to live, etc. As a first year student, luckily, obviously you get the opportunity to stay on campus. And one thing they did tell me, as I was doing a foundation year, technically my second year was my first year, I'd be allowed to stay on campus for both of those years. So I had 2 years on campus, which was, judging by other people's experiences, brilliant. So not going to complain about that. But yeah, the first week, freshers week, in short, it's good fun, although it has nothing to do with the next 3 or 4 years of your life. It's basically just a week-long meet and greet, which is good, but the friend circles you fall into then probably don't hold much relevance to what you'll be doing afterwards. The only one good thing I would definitely recommend is finding a society that you're passionate about. Join up with them, stick with them. There were a few I considered joining rugby or even the American football societies, but seeing how disjointed they were from what I was studying. I just didn't see. I just wasn't up for it, basically. Weirdly, one society I did join, although probably not really officially, was the girls' rugby team. Purely because one of my drinking buddies was a girl, and she could drink most guys under the table. So, yeah, I used to hang out with the girls' rugby team quite a lot. Yeah, that was good fun. But yeah, all in all, my first week, freshers week, I probably didn't spend it as wisely as I should have done. Could have done a bit more. I should have been a bit more proactive doing certain things. But, again, it's one of those things, they don't really tell you what to do in this first week. It's basically like they just let you into the zoo and say, there you go, have fun. So, skipping all the gory details of the actual events of education as such, because obviously for every single course that anyone ever does, or every single course that they offer, that section could be completely different. But in short, what did I learn? Practice makes perfect, and distractions make disaster. Simple as that. Not quite sure what I mean by the practice makes perfect, although in the engineering courses there are a lot of practical labs and examinations and such, and they are good. They really help you get to grips with the whole idea of higher education. You suddenly start understanding things a lot better than you would have done just learning about them on a theoretical basis, like in high school or secondary school. The second part of that statement, distractions make disaster. I was a bit of a demon for succumbing to my distractions, both through what my real interests were, so car culture, for instance. I was hardly ever on campus in the evenings and weekends. I would generally go out and find car clubs, go to car meets and cruises, etc. And I'd never really get involved with on-campus activities and events. So that definitely took up a lot of my time, and I wouldn't change anything about it, to be honest, because I met some great people during that time. But I should have probably spent a bit more time being a bit more proactive study-wise and just getting to grips with all the on-campus stuff. So yeah, practical labs, going back to practical labs, they're good, especially in engineering, although as I found out, they're only really good if you are of good health and sober. One thing at university that a lot of people talk about it, but no one really reiterates or exaggerate the real right word. No one really says how much of an impact the alcohol intake has on your time at university, and it's so easy to just say, oh yeah, fuck it, let's go for a drink, and then a day later you're hungover, your wallet's empty, you've achieved nothing except for a hangover. So that happens a lot. That's a weekly occurrence, if not several times a week it might happen. So yeah, I did attend a couple of practical labs and practical examinations, either completely hungover or with a stinking cold, which is not good fun. But yeah, it's definitely something to look out for. Even exams, so written exams, theoretical exams, it goes to show that even the establishment gets it wrong every now and then. There was one my exams in my, I think, second year that we were handed the wrong paper. Luckily, the questions were easy enough to answer, so everyone just kind of cracked on with it and did the exam. We all, or at least the majority of the of the group, appealed the results because we were given the wrong paper. We were asked questions that we didn't study for. However, when the response for the appeal came through, it transpired that the majority of the class had attained, I think it was around 85% plus. So everyone kind of just said, well, that's fine, we'll take that, because we were expecting the exam to be a bit harder. So nothing ever came of that, but nonetheless, I sat an exam, 30 of us sat an exam that we hadn't studied for, and we managed to get an average of 85% plus. Not too bad. And whilst in classes and that, it's definitely worth meeting more people. Naturally, in some of your classes, or lectures, I should say, you'll naturally click or sit with a few people and get on with them fairly well. It's definitely worth trying to spread your friendship circles a bit wider, maybe even into other courses and such, purely because one day down the line you might need that connection. And I'm only saying this because that's exactly the opposite of what I've done. I only still maintain contact with one person that I met at university. He's a very close friend, but everyone else that I met at university I haven't spoken to for about 5 or 6 years now. So yeah, when you make connections at university, definitely make an effort to keep those connections, speak to those people, be it once a month or once a year, just to say hello, how are you? That's more than enough. One thing I didn't really learn at university, in the sense that it wasn't taught or wasn't really taught to anyone, was real life skills. Those things are not taught at all. I know everyone says you learn them for yourselves, but just a little guidance doesn't even spring up at any point. Just the basics of money management, time management, how to manage your workload, especially if you've got a part-time job. Luckily, I was fortunate in that the part-time job I had was mostly only at weekends. It was very rare that I would work, say, like a morning on a weekday, because it was bar work. So Fridays and Saturday nights and the occasional Sunday afternoon I'd be working, and then that leaves me free Monday to Friday. I say free, it leaves me available for university and study the rest of the time. But yeah, no, one thing that you definitely have to develop for yourself is money management, time, work, and just the general balance between life, work, study, etc. It's a tough one to crack, but the sooner you can get used to it and crack it, the better. I've not very often, but a few times I've had someone ask me if my time at university was well spent. In a word, no. For several reasons. I won't go into detail, but it is partially of my own doing, and getting distracted. I was distracted by many things. Like I said, I should have taken a gap year to kind of just get some stuff out of my system. Instead, I was learning about things whilst at uni that I should have or could have done whilst on the gap year. Be it meeting new people, exploring love life, etc. And yeah, there are just a few things that I should have done whilst not having to concentrate on higher education. The part of that let me down, that wasn't of my own doing, was the whole UCAS cock up. If I had been able to do the computer systems engineering course, I think I would have done a lot better, purely because that particular course is not heavily maths based, or in maths involved even. Electronic and communications engineering is heavily maths based, and I do not do well when it comes to applied maths. It's some of it's just impossible as far as I can see it, and yeah, that really hit me hard. The other distraction, or distractions, as I said earlier, friends back at home, car culture. It just is something that they don't teach you about, I suppose. So you learn the hard way. And with the money management, for instance, you do end up wasting money on senseless activities and purchases like food, alcohol, going out, etc. Because there were a lot of times where it comes to the end of the month or something, and I'm absolutely scratching for money. Or a lot of people are in that same situation, and it's probably for the same reason. There's just not enough information readily available to say, here's some support, here's how you can manage something, be it money, time, work, anything like that. So yeah, the higher education system can probably learn a few things. It just feels like it's not a very professionally presented institute. So time being well spent aside, I obviously have to weigh up, or anyone should really weigh up, the benefits compared to cost. And basically for me, the benefits of higher education do not outweigh the costs. The cost of it definitely outweighs all the benefits, especially now that the cost of tuition is £9,000 a year or thereabouts. So when I attended, it was still £3,000 a year. That's a lot of money. Luckily, for me, my first year at university was paid for by family, by my parents. My second year, I managed to pay for all bar probably £500 of it through money I'd saved up at work, etc. And then it was only my second or third and fourth year, so half of my time at university, that I had to actually take out a tuition loan as well as a maintenance loan. So at the end of it, my loan, or the amount of debt that I'd racked up, was, I say only, it was half of what other people had racked up. It was about £14,500. And even now, I've been out of university for nearly 10 years. I've only paid off about £2,500 of that. It's a bloody slow process paying it back. You don't realise how much money it is at the beginning. So I can only imagine it's 3 times worse for people now, having to take out a loan for tuition. And what definitely doesn't help is university campuses. They are so bloody expensive. So yeah, it's convenient having a shop around the corner from, be it your dorm room or whatever, or halls. But the cost of even just alcohol, food, cigarettes, because almost everyone smokes at university, and just basic necessities are really expensive compared to what you might find it in town at a supermarket and such. So not only do they give you, or do they not give you, the mental support and help, they don't help you financially at all either. Everything's just really expensive. So one bit of advice there is don't do all your shopping on campus unless you really have to. Your best bet is walk into town or get a bus into town, take a big bag with you, go shopping at a supermarket and do it that way. You'll be saving a lot of money. So, yeah. So, in conclusion, really, I know it's only been a fairly short video. I've glossed over a lot of details, but I just want to get the main points across. Would I recommend it going to university? For the experience, yes, but if possible, only do a foundation degree, or like I did, the foundation year, which gives you a wide variety of knowledge and information to work with or play with. Also, it opens your options to entering other courses. Part of the reason for only going for the 1 year, obviously it keeps costs down, and the experience, it is a great experience being at university. When you do join some of the activities on campus, etc., be it weekends, evenings, etc., they are good fun. You can meet a lot of really good people. The experience is definitely worth it, but like I said, just for 1 year. Anything more than that, it becomes difficult to kind of see what the benefits really are, especially nowadays, as when you go to apply for a job, unless you're a straight A student and you got a first class degree where you can get into a corporate job, if a corporate job is your dream. For a lot of people it's not. It's not. A lot of companies don't really give a shit about what you have on paper. I definitely found this out the hard way. Just having a degree, if it's not a first class degree, just having a degree means nothing. Most companies want a graduate with 2 years experience, but you can't get the experience until you get a job, and you can't get a job until you get the experience. So you're in that endless cycle. And what I ended up doing was just getting a part-time job, and then after a few months had enough experience to put on a CV to get a slightly better job and a slightly better job, etc., etc. So, but that's another detail I'll go into another day. My job history has been very, very up and down, and I'll be honest now, having a degree in engineering has never assisted me in getting a job at all. Simple as that. It has had no bearing on any of the jobs I've had. So yeah, a university education definitely has not paid for itself. The fact is, we're not in the 1960s, 70s, 80s anymore where that applies. Companies now want people with real experience. You'll be much better off, especially in the technology sector. You'll be much better off learning something yourself, making something, build an app, make a nice website, do some nice designs, anything like that. Companies pay more for that, so that's what it is. Yeah, all that said, like I said, on-campus stuff, it's almost detrimental to just say yes more. As I said, I didn't really get involved with too many activities on campus because I didn't agree to many. I just didn't say yes to enough things. When a group of friends would say they're going over there to do that or this, that and the other, I would always have my off-campus distractions. So definitely stick with the people at university while you're there. Build on those bonds, basically. But obviously you have to be able to know for yourself when to knuckle down and say no. that's important. So again, that's where I went wrong, going into some of the practical labs with a headache and a hangover, not being able to say no the night before. But at the end of the day, you definitely have to make your own decisions. Don't let others make it for you. Don't let the omen of coming from a family of graduates be the reason for you going to university if it's not what you really want to do. It's definitely something you have to think about for yourself, and pave your own way. Don't let it be paved for you. So okay, well that's it. That wraps it up for episode 2 of Focus, and I'll be back next week sometime.